Hey everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Wolfpacker Show. I'm Ethan McDowell. I'm your host, and I'm joined, as I am every week now, by Noah Fleischman, our newest staff writer at thewolfpacker.com. And it's game week once again, short game week. We got a game coming up again on Friday, NC State versus UVA. The Wolfpack are hitting the road for a prime time Friday night matchup. We're going to preview it all. We're going to go through the key matchups, the key numbers to watch in this game, and just kind of talk about what we've been hearing over at Practice Media availabilities this week. Before we dive into that, just a couple of housekeeping notes. We're both writers for the wolfpacker.com. It's part of the On3 network, the fastest growing recruiting network out there. Sports, college sports, recruiting, everything you could ask for all in one place. It's only $1 to subscribe to our premium message board, premium recruiting scoops. Noah had a really good story about a recent men's basketball official visitor. He interviewed him, discussed, what his weekend at NC State was like. And, recruiting, it's a year-round thing now. We post scoops constantly up on there. So go check it out. It's only $1 to join. It's hard to get cheaper than that. So please take advantage of that deal. That's thewolfpacker.com. We're on all social medias at the Wolfpacker. And if you're watching us on YouTube, we're also on all podcast platforms. And if you're listening to us on any of those podcast platforms, we're on YouTube. Please subscribe, leave a rating, a review, 5 stars, please. It means a lot to us. And with all of that said, let's just dive in. And Noah, so UVA, this is a team that, thanks to your previous job, you've seen a lot of. You've been able to really just dive into UVA football early in the season. Obviously, we've both been studying up on them this week. The Cavaliers are 0-3 to start the season. They lost to Tennessee in a blowout. That's not too much of a surprise. Then they lost in a dramatic game to JMU where they blew an 11-point fourth quarter lead. And then once again unraveled in the fourth quarter against Maryland. So there's nothing horrible about any of those 3 losses. Those are 3 solid teams. But this is a winless team. On3 has them at the bottom of their power rankings. And this, on paper, is a team that NC State should beat this week, right? But it's ACC football. Anything can happen. If you watched the Boston College game last year, anything can happen in the ACC play. But no, let's just get your initial thoughts on the upcoming matchup between NC State and UVA.
Yeah, Virginia has definitely had an up and down year. I mean, they got blown out by Tennessee, as you said. And that JMU game, obviously, since I was there, I covered JMU before, working here. So I was there in person at Scott Stadium, where we'll be on Friday night. And, JMU jumped out to an early lead, 14-0. UVA storms back, takes the lead. And then, the lightning delay happens. The same weather that rolled through Raleigh and took out the scoreboard for a little bit was the same weather that rolled through Charlottesville. And, after that, JMU really turned it on after that break, scored 14 unanswered, win the game, 36-35 in Charlottesville. And then UVA comes back next week. The following week jumps out to a 14-0 lead. So changes the script on it. Instead of going down 14, they come out 14 and then didn't score after that. And, end up losing, 42-14, I believe. So on the year, they've been outscored 47-3 in the fourth quarter. So the fourth quarter is not their quarter. And that has obviously showed it's a big issue if you're a team in any level of college football. If you can't score in the fourth quarter, you're going to have a hard time winning games.
Yeah, absolutely. And that creates an interesting dynamic for this one because NC State's been a strong starting team this year. They've jumped out to some early leads. The offense has been humming early with those scripted possessions that Robert and I has drawn up. And it just creates a dynamic of, all right, well, if NC State can start strong, this is a team that in UVA that really hasn't finished strong, which that spells success for the Wolfpack. One of the biggest storylines for this game is we don't really know who's going to be playing quarterback for UVA. It's we can promise you it's the quarterback will be named Tony, but it could either be freshman Tony Calandria, who started against Maryland kind of unexpectedly after it sounded like Tony Muskett, the season opener starter, who I believe was injured against Tennessee. Um, we'll get to we'll see if he comes back. They haven't shared anything official there. It's a bit of a mystery. Noah, you've seen both quarterbacks a little bit. Just kind of break down the difference between the two signal callers and you know how they could pose threats potentially to NC State's defense.
Yeah, Tony Muskett is the guy who, won their job coming out of camp. He's the transfer from Monmouth, played well there. I think, he went like 14-9 as a starter. So it wasn't, the greatest FCS quarterback, but played well enough to be able to transfer to UVA and win the job. He's from Virginia. That helped getting him there. And he played, decent against Tennessee. I mean, you're playing a top 15 team in the country, and UVA does not have an offensive line. I'm sure we're going to get into that. I mean, their offensive line has not been good at all. So whatever quarterback back there does not have a lot of time to throw the ball, and he's not a very mobile quarterback. So when there's not a lot of time, he's not going to run around and scramble like a guy like Brennan Armstrong, or we'll talk about Anthony Calandria. He does too. It just presents a lot of problems. And he got hurt, on a sack, or not a sack, but a quarterback hit. He got drove to the ground and right on his shoulder, and it's just non-throwing shoulder, and he's been dealing with that ever since. So he missed the JMU game. Anthony Calandria, who came in relief at Tennessee, but just handed the ball off because they were down by so much, comes in, plays against JMU in his first career start, in just a second college game, and goes and throws for 377 yards, 2 touchdowns. Did throw a pick, which was just a great play by a JMU safety who basically jumped out of nowhere and made the grab and came in bounds. But he played well, threw the ball really well. He only had 2 incompletions at halftime. And it was really looking good, and then kind of, fell off, in that fourth quarter, struggled a little bit. Couldn't really get any drives going there. The UVA really couldn't get anything going together in that fourth quarter. So he's more of a runner, more of a scrambler. He will, if NC State brings pressure, he will run around and escape the pocket and still make a play downfield. We saw it against JMU. He's comfortable doing that. He's comfortable and confident. I mean, they talk about he's from Florida, and they call it like a moxie just from being from Florida. But no, he's confident. I wouldn't call him cocky. I'd call him confident. He backed it up. Did not play well against Maryland. Threw 3 picks on 3 straight drives in the second half to basically seal their fate. But that's a freshman, right? Freshmen are going to make mistakes. He's learning on the fly, just, as NC State's freshmen are on offense. So I think either one can play. Calandria has shown he can play at the college level. So I don't think that, if he comes in, NC State fans can't, pencil as a win, because he's a really good quarterback.
And I think both of them, even though they have different skill sets, are kind of both favorable matchups for NC State, because you have Calandria, who he's a freshman, and you saw against Maryland, like he unraveled. Like those 3 interceptions, and the third one was just a really, really poor decision. And that's not it. He was on the road. He's a freshman. Like those mistakes are going to happen. But shoot, I mean, when you play against a Tony Gibson defense where you're getting all these different blitz looks and just having to stay on your toes constantly against a really good defensive line that should be able to get a lot of penetration against a not so good offensive line, then I think you would maybe be on course for a similar outcome to what you saw against Maryland. And then Muskett, I mean, he's a pocket passer, and it's a similar sort of deal. If you can't move around against NC State's defense, they're going to hit you. Like they're going to be able to get into the backfield and create some pressure early and often. So yes, so regardless of who they play, NC State should have a decent setup there. Elsewhere on UVA's offense, they do have 2 really, really good receivers, guys that could probably play just about anywhere in the ACC. First, you have Malachi Fields, who's a 6'4" receiver, leads the team with 19 receptions, and he's second on the team with 207 yards. So yeah, super tall outside receiver who poses mismatches for a lot of teams out there. Thankfully for NC State, you have tall and physical cornerbacks and Shaheem Battle and Aiden White, who is expected to return this week unless anything happens this week during practice. But he's on course to return. So you have an all-ACC cornerback in Aiden White, and then Shaheem Battle, who hasn't allowed a reception this season. He's been lights out, and that'll be a really interesting physical matchup on the outside that, no one's won a 50-50 ball against Shaheem yet. I bet he'll be tested a little bit with going up against Fields. And then Malik Washington is their 5'8" slot receiver. He's explosive, averaging 16.1 yards per reception. He makes big plays. They're going to get the ball into his hand, let him do things after the catch, and make plays that way. So that's really going to be a matchup of he's going to catch passes, but you got to bring him down quick. And Robert Kennedy, NC State's nickel, has done a good job of that. He's given up a few catches this year. I believe it was 7, or he's been targeted 7 times for 5 completions. On those 5 receptions, receivers have racked up 7 total yards after the catch. That's really good. So if you can limit Washington's yards after the catch, then you're in pretty good shape there. Just from what you've seen, from what you've read, just anywhere else on UVA's offense that you see them posing a challenge to NC State?
Yeah, I think, when you look at their running backs, they've got 3 really skilled running backs. Mike Collins is one of them. He's the guy who survived the shooting on their campus, and he came back and he scored a touchdown against JMU in their first home game. He scored 2 actually in that game. You look at him. Kobe Pace is a former Clemson transfer who followed Tony Elliott to UVA. He is explosive and can make plays. He can catch. So I mean, they've got the players in the backfield that'll pose a big threat, and they can also run pass protect, which I think against NC State's definitely going to be needed if you're UVA, just because of how many linebackers or defensive linemen are going to end up in the backfield. Just on given play. So they're good at pass protection. They're good at be able to catch the ball. I mean, their running backs are a really solid room. I mean, you'd expect that with Tony Elliott, who coached the position at Clemson, and he knows what he's doing. And Kobe Pace is probably one of the I'd say he's one of the top backs in the ACC. At one point, he's got the potential to be that, and he's definitely can show that in a given play if you give him space and he can get out and run.
Yeah, his stats aren't eye-popping on the ground, right? Like 3.6 yards per carry right now. But when you look at his receiving numbers, is what jumps out to me. He's 3rd on the team in receiving and catches with 5 for 103. Given 75 yards of that came on 1 play. But, UVA is going to use their running backs in the passing game. So that's worth keeping an eye out for. And that kind of boils down to eye discipline, right? You got to keep an eye on those running backs, kind of similar to how NC State has struggled to keep an eye on tight ends. So that's going to be something to watch. And we'll have to see how NC State handles that, because I'm not sure they've really played a team that's used running backs in the passing game as much as Virginia likely will on Friday. All right. And I'm kind of moving over to the defense. UVA's defensive front. It is absolutely the strength of this unit. And that unit is led by 6th-year senior Cam Butler. He has 2.5 sacks on the year, 19 total tackles at coming off the edge. He's a player. He's experienced, and he is a disruptor in the backfield. He made plays against Tennessee, and he's going to present some problems for NC State's tackles. Well, it'll be a really, really interesting matchup between them and Butler. But he's the main guy I'm keeping an eye on that defensive front, but they're kind of good throughout, and they can cause you some issues. Against Maryland, especially, when I went back and watched some of that game, it was really tough to run between the tackles. I don't know that much about Maryland's offensive line, admittedly, but when it got down into the red zone, they just weren't really able to get much going between the tackles. And so Maryland really relied on just kind of created through the passing game. Tagovailoa also ran a little bit from the quarterback position. But Noah, just defensively on UVA, what have you seen from them, and any players in particular standing out to you?
Yeah, as you said, their D line is definitely the strength of this. I think the strength of their whole team, just because how good they are. They're all 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th-year players. They're all really veteran on that line, so they know what they're doing. A guy like Chico Bennett is another defensive end for them, and he's been banged up a little bit this year, but he is like their go-to, prized, I guess, possession, if you want to call it. So maybe that's why you're opening up places for Cam Butler to get in the backfield, because teams are really looking at Chico Bennett and saying, all right, we got to shut him down. And giving an opportunity on the other side of the line. So, I mean, the D line, it can get back there and get back there in a hurry. So, I think NC State's offensive line is going to get tested. This is an offensive line that gave up 8 tackles for a loss against VMI. So, something to keep an eye on and see if UVA can, be able to do that, tackle behind the line of scrimmage. But we'll see. I mean, when you look at UVA's secondary, they're all right. They're nothing, special, nothing fancy. They're your average, high level Division I secondary. But a lot of teams in the past have gotten behind them, and I think that's an opportunity for NC State to exploit. They haven't taken too many shots downfield this year. Robert and I is pretty comfortable in Scott Stadium. Maybe they take some shots with Brennan Armstrong. I'm sure we'll talk about that. They lived on that, playing at UVA. So we'll see what happens. But their secondary is nothing special. But that D line, if they get after the quarterback, it could be a long day for Brennan Armstrong. And I'm sure they want to. He said yesterday that he knows that they're licking their chops. They never got to hit him in practice, so this is their opportunity to try to go after him.
Yeah, thanks for bringing up Chico. He's a really good player, and he's another disruptor potentially to keep an eye on. Kind of in that secondary, did want to mention Jonas Sanker. I don't know if that's how you pronounce his last name. My apologies if it's not Jonas, but he leads the team in tackles with 28 and pass breakups with 4. And he's kind of emerging in his second year starting as a really, really productive defensive back. He plays primarily in the box. So he's going to be helping out a lot in run support, grades out really well in that area. So he's just someone to keep an eye on there. All right. And then kind of the last big storyline I wanted to touch on, Noah, you kind of mentioned it, was this is Brennan Armstrong's big return to UVA. I mean, he set so many records there, just absolutely demolished the Virginia record books. 9,034 career passing yards with the Cavaliers. So, he's someone that was beloved for 5 seasons there. And I don't think this is a deal where he's going to get like booed or anything for transferring, because I think he has a pretty I think UVA fans know what he brought to that team and what he added to that program. But it's going to be an emotional return. I think Brennan hasn't really he's kind of downplayed it this week. But I mean, shoot, anywhere you've played for 5 years and you come back, of course it's going to be emotional, and of course it's his first time back playing a game since the tragic shooting. He said he has plans to honor the victims of that tragic shooting on game day, but he's going to wait to unveil those until he's at the game. But yeah, and also want to shout out our friend Jaden at the News and Observer. She wrote an awesome story on Armstrong's return to UVA. Please go check that story out as well. But yeah, so I don't think it's any sort of concern of whether he would be distracted by the return. Like Coach Doran said, he's a competitor. He's going there to win a football game. Armstrong basically has said the same himself. But I'm sure it'll be a cool and kind of emotional moment for him. Probably for offensive coordinator Robert and I too. So we'll just we'll see how that goes, and big moment for both of them. All right, and we're going to come back with a little bit more analysis and some predictions and over-unders and all that fun stuff. But first, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Game Time. The Game Time app is a ticket buying and selling marketplace. No, if you're like me, I always wait for the last minute to get tickets. And, with some other sites that can get you in trouble with prices, really not Game Time. Like you can pretty much up until kickoff or the start of whatever contest, you can find tickets for, affordable prices. Very easy to use app. It's, the Game Time app on all app stores, or you can look at it online on gametime.co. That's not .com, that's .co. And one of the coolest things, by far my favorite thing about Game Time, is just how, I'll hold up the app for those watching on YouTube. But if you look and see, they have the seat view. So you can see exactly the view from where you will be sitting in the stadium. It's pretty cool. Usually when I'm buying tickets, I have to go and look at, another site to see the seat view. And this puts it all in one place, and that's really helpful. So go download the Game Time app and use code Wolfpack for a discount on your first purchase. That's all caps Wolfpack for a discount on your first purchase. I believe it's $20 off, but I might be wrong on that. Anyways, it's a sizable discount on whatever your first purchase is on the Game Time app or gametime.co. All right, jumping right back into it, Noah. So we've gone through both sides of the ball. Before the break, I did want to mention special teams. I mean, shoot, NC State special teams, they were good last year. They are even better this year, just in the way that, Julian Gray has just provided just an electric spark as a kick returner. And Jalen Coit, really just picked up where they are left off and has been a difference maker for this team. So here's a couple stats for you. UVA so far this season is giving up 31.8 kick return yards per attempt and 24.6 punt return yards per attempt. For Gray and Coit, who are both in the top 10 of their respective rankings for yards per attempt, I mean, shoot, and number one in the ACC, I believe, for both of them, they have to be seeing those numbers like, oh man, we're going to have some opportunities on Friday, right? They have to be excited about that. And, Jalen, we spoke to him this week during media availability. He said he was kind of jokingly frustrated that Julian got in the end zone before he did. So I think Jalen's motivated to go get himself a touchdown on a punt return. So that'll be interesting to see. And something I've noticed just from rewatching the early games is I'll say like NC State's getting close to a punt block. They've been really close on a few attempts this year. They're bringing pressure, and I'm not saying it's going to happen this game, but at some point this season, I think they'll break through, block a punt, and the special teams will continue to change the game. But all right, so that's enough preview talk. Let's get into some predictions. Noah, just break it down. 100% accurate prediction here. How is the NC State versus UVA game going to go Friday night?
Well, I'll tell you this. I think they're blocking a punt. JMU, when they played, them blocked a punt for a touchdown. So it's possible. They had UVA punting at their end zone, blocked it, recovered it, touchdown. So I'll say that now. I'll say they'll block a punt unless UVA got their punt coverage team figured out a little bit. But yeah, I think that this game, NC State is a 9-point favorite, 9.5-point favorite right now. I'd say the final score, if you wanted a final score, it's 31-10 Wolfpack. I do think, UVA will be able to, put points on the board. But I think that, NC State will be able to strike early and just keep it rolling after that. 31-10. And Brennan Armstrong, if you want me to predict, I'll say he throws for 345 and 2 touchdowns.
Wow. Okay. So those are some big time passing numbers.
Yeah. I'll say he'll go out, blazing there.
I think that's a safe pick. Like I really like how NC State's receivers match up against UVA secondary. They're the Virginia slot corner. Hold on, I have his name here. Tavon Kyle is he's off to kind of a rocky start this season, and his PFF tackling grade is well below average, and he's allowing a decent amount of yards after the catch. And man, you match up against Kevin Concepcion, and you might be in trouble there because he's been really hard to tackle, really hard to keep track of for opposing secondaries this year. So my bold prediction is that KC gets into the end zone. I think we're talking about it every week at this point. Like he catches so many passes. Eventually, one of them will be in the end zone. But it's going to happen this week, is what I'm going to say. And I think this will be another one, like we alluded to earlier in the show. I think NC State will start strong. I think they'll jump out to an early lead and kind of just maintain that, and then maybe they get that special teams or defensive touchdown like in the second half that kind of just blows it open, and then they're kind of not coasting but in good shape from there. My final score prediction is very similar. I had it as 31-13. So I do think UVA will get on the board a couple times, but NC State will hold them to field goals, and they will capitalize and get into the end zone. And all right, so you already gave us the over under on Brennan Armstrong's passing yards. Let's go rushing yards in general. Just over under, like let's say 175 against UVA.
I mean, UVA's got a good defensive line. And if I'm saying that Brendan Armstrong's throwing for, over 300, I'm going to take the under on that. I think, if they're throwing the ball that much, not going to run for, 200 yards. So I'll take the under, but I don't think it's going to, I think, they'll be at like 150 maybe as a team. I think, you have a lot of guys around, 40, 50 yards carrying, and like, that'll get the job done against UVA.
Yeah, I'm taking the under there too. I mean, if you look at where Maryland really thrived, it was Tagovailoa like extending plays with his feet, whether that was scrambling out of the pocket and finding a receiver who was able to create separation, or making plays with his legs and picking up first downs that way. He had some success in that area, and I think Brennan will too. I think this is another game where you could see Brennan leading the team in rushing yards again. I do want to point out we're a quarter of the way through the season. My big, bold take in the preseason show, no, I know you weren't here for it, but my big, bold take was that Brennan Armstrong would lead this team in rushing. And hey, through a quarter of the season, I'm right. So we'll see if that holds up. But yeah, so I'll take the under on the rushing yards. But I don't think it'll be – I think it'll be more of a game plan choice maybe than just running a billion times into that defensive front and getting swallowed up. Let's go over under 1.5 forced turnovers by NC State. They have a turnover differential of 0 this year. They've created 3 turnovers, 2 picks, and a fumble recovery. Do you see them creating more than 1.5 turnovers or less?
I'll say if Anthony Calandre's the quarterback, over. If Tony Muskett's the quarterback, under. I'll tell you that way. If the veteran's at the quarterback, I think he makes the right decisions and doesn't turn the ball. Maybe he turns it over once, but that's it. If Calandre's there and they have to throw the ball a lot of times if they're down, I think you take the over on him.
Yeah, I'm gonna take the over either way. I think it's going to be a rough night for UVA's offense. Get a couple big plays to maybe get into opposing territory, but I think there's going to be a lot of drives where there's just a lot of pressure in the face of the quarterback, and it just doesn't go too well for them. All right, and let's pick the spread here. It's 9.5 right now. That's a hefty road favorite for NC State. So you already gave out your score predictions. Do you believe they're going to cover pretty comfortably here?
Yeah, it's a cover. I mean, they're a 9.5-point favorite. 31-10 is a 21-point win, so I think it's easy there. And the over/under is right around 40 something too, so that could be close there too. So you think Las Vegas? They tend to be right a lot of times. They expect NC State to score a lot, but they don't expect UVA to.
Awesome. And who's going to lead NC State in receiving?
Yeah, I think KC has been a guy who's been all over the field, right? He leads the country in receptions, or second in the country in receptions as a freshman at the FBS level. And if you look at his targets, he's got double the most of the next guy on the team. He's got 24 targets. The next one is Bradley Rosner at 12, or Porter Brooks at 12. So I think he's the easy pick, but give me Bradley Rosner with a big catch down the field, and he'll lead the team in receiving.
I like it. Yeah, he's starting to emerge. He was someone he arrived like a couple days before fall camp, right? Like I talked to him shortly after he committed to NC State, and while we were on the phone, he got his acceptance into NC State, and then he was like, all right, well, I'm moving this weekend. So it was a quick turnaround for him, and Coach Doran has talked a few times about him, and just as like just effusively praised just like his maturity. As he is 25 years old, I believe. So the 8th year college senior. So he's really starting to come into his own. He's got 2 touchdowns in the past 2 games, and I think that's a good pick. I'm excited to see how his role continues to emerge. I'm going to take KC just because he is, I think, pretty clearly Brennan Armstrong's #1 receiver as a freshman, which is encouraging to see, exciting for Wolfpack fans. It's been a little while since you've had a freshman receiver come in and make like an instant impact like that. So, man, that's cool to see. All right. Well, I believe that is pretty much a wrap on our show today. Thank you all so much for listening. I'm Ethan McDowell, and I'm with Noah Fleischman. Hey, we're hitting the road Friday. We're going to be there, getting to Charlottesville nice and early. We'll have full pregame coverage. Make sure you check that out over on thewolfpacker.com. Follow us both on Twitter as well. You can find us at the Wolfpacker on Twitter, and you can find both of our personal accounts through that feed quite easily. Subscribe, please. It is only $1. That's it, $1. It doesn't get cheaper than that to join our website for premium access to team, football and basketball, men's and women's hoops. Wrestling content is going to start up pretty soon again, and we're just going to have a whole lot of fun stuff. We've got more content going up on the Wolfpacker right now than I think we've had maybe ever. So, go read Noah and I's writing. We're excited about it. Again, $1 on thewolfpacker.com. And again, shout out to our sponsor, the Game Time app. Go buy your tickets for the NC State Louisville game. You can find them on there. You can see exactly where you'd be sitting. And and use code Wolfpack for your first purchase. All right. I'm Ethan with Noah, and we'll talk to you after the game.